Hello everyone, it is time for us to do our Barnes & Noble middle grade vlog. I recently read all the picture books from the shortlist for like the Barnes & Noble award for like kids, children's, middle grade, young adult. They have all this stuff. I don't remember exactly what it is. The Barnes & Noble awards for the different stuff. I did picture books. It's time for middle grade. And there's 6 different titles that we have to read. And we're going to definitely do this like a reading vlog. I have 4 of them physically, and one of them I just got the audiobook from my library, and then there's one more that I need the audiobook for. I'm on the list, which means it'll probably be one of the last books we do. But I decided I need something that looks fun. I'm in the middle of a reading slump, which is part of the reason I wanted to do this. I've read some really good middle grade books this year, and so the fact that they had like 6 new ones that just like look really interesting. Some look really fun, some look more hard-hitting, but like I need something in my life. The first one we're gonna go with, I think, is The House at the Edge of Magic by Amy Sparks. This cover just like looks so fun. I love this like hodgepodge nature of the house. We have some characters in here as well, even though it's a little bit hard to see, but they look magical and fantastical. Like there's like a spoon person, if you guys can see that here, on the spine. Like, yes, please. It is also, I think, one of the shortest ones we have because it's very thin compared to some of the other ones that I picked up. It's like, can we see exactly how many pages we have here? There's an epilogue. 219 pages minus the 1-page epilogue, so 220 pages. But also the pages have such wide margins. This is going to be something I can speed through. And I read only one other book this month, which is not bad. And by one other book, I do mean like besides the picture books I read, but I read it the very first like day of August into the second day, but it was another like 200 something page story that was very, very quick to read, and it was pretty good. Like I was hooked. And so I think it's in a very different vein of story, but I think this is sort of what I need. I need a short, fun, magical, fantastical adventure to get this kicked off. So that's what we're gonna do today. I do need to do some editing and things later, but this is part of my goal. My goal is to read a fun middle grade, and hopefully I love it, and it'll just kick off my love for reading again, because I definitely need to do this. Okay, so we're starting off fine. I finished The House at the Edge of Magic last night. This whole book took me about an hour and 20 minutes to read. So like I said, very, very quick. And I'm giving it 3 stars. I think part of it is because it's very, very quick. This basically follows a girl named Nine, who is sort of like a street urchin thief. And she ends up stealing this miniature house that when she uses the door knocker on it, it blooms into a huge house that fills an alleyway that only she can see. And inside this house are a troll like housekeeper, the little spoon guy that we saw on the spine, and a magician named Flabbergast, who they said he looks like a few years older than her or something like that, but he keeps talking about the 1800s. Like, I don't know if this is a period piece or if he's like older than he actually looks. I don't know. And I think that's part of the thing too. I don't really know what's going on here. There's some like randomness happening just for the sake of being random. Some very like weird choices just to make it weird and funny. And I was hoping for a little bit more. Basically, this house is like under a curse, and Nine now has to like help them solve the curse, but everything happens in like 200 pages. And the reason for the curse was just like not good enough in my opinion. I've read better middle grade. This, I could see it being fun for kids. It was very, very easy to read. I was just really wishing for more from it. And it's just like really short, and so everything was like very, very quick. Like there wasn't a ton of development. I just wanted more from the characters. I wanted more from everything that was going on. It wasn't necessarily bad, but it's gonna be very forgettable to me, so I did give it 3 stars, and it was an okay start to this vlog, I guess. Like, I just wished for more. Now, the next book that I'm going to be listening to, because I actually got something that came through on my library, my Libby app, we're gonna go with Afia in the Land of Wonders by Mia Arujo. Hopefully I'm saying all that correct. Because I'm listening to it on audiobook, they will correct me if it's wrong. This is a 5-hour audiobook. I will listen on 2 times speed like I usually do, so it'll probably take me like 2.5-ish. And I don't know much about this one either. I'm going to assume it's going to be more fantasy because we have like the Land of Wonders. We also have, I'm looking at like the cover on Goodreads right now because it's a bigger picture than my other one. That looks like sort of like a Cheshire Cat, right? Like, is this an Alice in Wonderland retelling? I feel like it could be. A reimagining of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. Okay, I don't think I'm going to read into it any more than that. I think that's all I really need to know to go on for now, because it is just going to be a type of Alice in Wonderland retelling. I'm excited. I do like retellings. We'll see what happens from there. And that is going to be the next one I'm going to read because I'm going to listen to it on audio. And I need to do like laundry and chores today. So like, that's the next priority. I'll come back to you when we've gotten into it a little bit. Okay, so I did the laundry and things. Took us a little bit longer to do that, but I did get it done, and that means that I actually listened to Afia in the Land of Wonders while I was doing that. So I got just under half an hour into the book, which is actually like 21% in, so it's going by pretty quickly that way, and I'm absolutely loving the voice of this. Like, the way it's written sounds really, really good. Like, I'm very, very intrigued by this, so much more so than the last book. The thing is, there's just like a couple little tiny things that I want to mention. So this is obviously going to be some sort of retelling of Alice in Wonderland. And right now we have Afia, who is a twin sister, and they are like on the eve of their 16th birthday. I thought this was a middle grade. Them being 15, turning 16, and like in this 20%, we've actually gotten to their 16th birthday type of thing. That is solidly in like YA territory for me. So I feel like that's a little bit off. And they're supposed to be like inducted into adulthood in some way. And apparently it's like you do what your family does. So the family is like crystal traders. So they're supposed to be crystal traders. And Afia's like not 100% into that. She's not too sure about that. And at the very beginning, they're at like the market area and they meet this like guy who carves statues of animals, and she accidentally breaks one, and he has like some sort of magic that turns it into a different animal. Like, it was a giraffe and now it's a gazelle. Like, we have a gazelle on the cover. And so she's like more curious about that. He invites her to meet him at midnight to potentially go see animals and stuff. And obviously this is going to be some way to get her into like the Wonderland type of thing. But so like my biggest thing right now is just like, she's 16 basically. Like, we're in the story now. She was 15 like the day before she turned 16. Now she's 16. I feel like this should be more of a YA than a middle grade. But otherwise, I'm really enjoying the writing style and stuff. I just realized, because I was putting stuff into my phone and everything like that, like my apps that I use for reading, the top of this book says it's an illustrated adventure. And so obviously I'm listening to it on audio. I'm not missing anything by doing it on audio, but I bet it would be better to have that experience with pictures. However, my library does not have a copy of this book. And since I already have it as an audio, I'm gonna continue that way. If I absolutely love it, I can always like buy it later and have it. But the author of this story, Mia Arujo, that's what they said in the audiobook, because I wasn't entirely too sure how to pronounce it, is an illustrator. So it makes sense. Like, if you go on her Instagram, it's tons and tons of art. The other thing that got me about that though, because I was looking stuff up and putting things in my apps, she's not black. And that's not necessarily a detriment, you know what I mean? But when I come into a story where the the narrator is obviously from like an African speaking country, or at least can have an African accent, and like I know that is very, very vague. It's the same thing to me as like people saying, oh, it's an Asian accent. Like, yes, I understand different accents. they're gonna be different. Different Asian accents are different. Different African accents are different, but I cannot tell the difference of what the narrator is. I'm sure I could look it up and like have that specifically, but like, what if they are putting on an accent? Like, you know how like American versus British English, those accents are completely different. I'm sorry, I'm going very general here, but we have an accent. The characters have an accent. And they're in this like fictionalized country in Africa, because that is where it's setting. That's like all the pictures that you see are in very like, again, cultural style clothing. And so for the character to be Black from a fictionalized Africa, to have some of that sort of cultural aspects in here and not have this story be written by someone whose own voice is, rubs me the wrong way a little bit. Like, did we have to have this retelling be that way? Could this author, who is Argentinian American, not have it been set in like a fictionalized Argentina? So again, when I first jumped into it, the first 21% that I listened to, I didn't know any of this information, and I was really, really enjoying it, except for the fact that like it feels more like it probably should have been in the YA section than the middle grade section. I'm definitely going to continue because I want to know where it's going to go. We've, you know, basically barely started, but those are just things to keep in mind because it is something that I noticed afterwards. We're going to be reading more for sure, but well, I guess we'll see how the rest of it goes. Okay, so it is the next day. I ended up reading until like 50%-ish yesterday in Afia and the Land of Wonders. And then I was going to talk to you guys, didn't have time really, so I did end up listening to the last like hour and a bit of it and finished it today. So it only took me like less than 2.5 hours to listen to the entire audiobook, and I'm giving it like a 3.5. I feel like it had a ton of potential, but the things that I mentioned before were still issues that I had throughout this. It is an Alice in Wonderland retelling, and I liked seeing the little bits and pieces of it. So like, the queen will sometimes behead people, obviously. They had like the eat me kinds of things, and not exactly a caterpillar, but she eventually goes somewhere to a place with people sort of in that vein. It's like a shaman sort of thing. And he's very cryptic like the caterpillar and things like that. And so I liked seeing the little bits and pieces of Alice in Wonderland, but our main character is 16. And so I really wanted it to feel like she was more like a 16-year-old. However, the actual content of the book is not enough for a teen or young adult audience. Like, even if it wasn't called young adult and it was called teen, because back in like the early 2000s, the YA section was teen. 16 is firmly in the teens. Even if it was 15, 15 is firmly in the teens. But she was acting very, very young. So I don't quite know why we made her to be 16. And then the content in here was very tame compared to what could have been in a YA. There was also some characters that I was like, I wished for a little bit more development. There was one other character who almost felt like it should have been a romance, but they just didn't include that. And again, like if it was a YA book, I feel like it would have definitely been put in there. And it just wasn't. And so then we get to like the parts with like the beheading and things, like I mentioned, and it's not like super graphic, but it did feel like they described the beheading and the blood and things in more than what a middle grade audience would have, but everything, all the like stakes of the story were less than a YA book should have. And so I was really just wanting more from it. It went by very, very quickly. Like I said, I finished the whole thing in less than 2.5 hours. And then the other thing, our author is not Black. All of the characters, I'm pretty sure, are supposed to be Black, based in this like fantasy Africa type of situation, but none of it had substance. There was no reasoning for that. Like, I could imagine these characters being any other race, color, anything like that, and it would be completely the same. Like, there was no need for it to be set there on purpose, like for a reason. I did not look at any of the illustrations, obviously, because I didn't have a physical copy. I'm sure they were gorgeous because like the cover's gorgeous, but for this author making all the characters Black and the author not being Black and it not actually mattering, it rubbed me the wrong way. Like, I wish this was set more in maybe the author's like actual ethnicity or country, like Argentina or anything like that. Like, that would have been good. Like, give me a reason that you're doing that. Because I love when we have books with representation and things like that, but like, I didn't like the idea of it just being there and not actually meaning anything. We also had a lot of different talk about like siblings and things in here, because again, Afia is a twin. But again, it felt very surface level. We had like 3 different sort of like main sibling groups in here that were touched upon, but not actually delved into. So the fact that it kept bringing the sibling thing up, I was wishing for more, especially by the ending of the book. I was just like, okay, none of that seemed to matter to me. So I do think the writing was good. I do think the actual Alice in Wonderland retelling hit all the notes that I wanted. I liked it more than the last book I read, which I rated a 3, which is why I'm rating it a 3.5, but I don't think it was amazing. And I'm sad about that, because like when I first started reading, I thought it was going to be really, really, really good. And yeah, so that's where we're at right now. I have 1 more audiobook that I'm waiting for from the library, but I do have 3 more physical books, and one of them actually, as I throw it at myself, is actually like a comic graphic novel. I think it's graphic novel. I think this is where it is. Graphic novel situation. This is The Other Side of Tomorrow by Tina Cho, art by Deb J.J. Lee. I'm not entirely too sure what this is all about, but it is graphic, and so I think this would be very quick and easy to get through, obviously. Oh, okay, about kids in North Korea. From never knowing where they'll find their next meal to avoiding soldiers lurking at every corner, North Koreans have learned that sticking around can be just as deadly as attempting to flee. Almost. Okay, yeah. I have a feeling this is going to be hard-hitting, but it is a graphic novel, and they'll be very quick to read. This is going to be the next one. I'm calling it now. We're going to read this one next. Hello, everyone. It's been a couple days since I last saw you, and I actually finished The Other Side of Tomorrow by Tina Cho that same day that you saw me. But Elliot was not feeling so good yesterday, so I did not get a chance to like come up and talk to you guys about this book. So like I mentioned before, this one is going to be a graphic novel, so it was pretty quick to read. This is following 2 kids. One is 10 years old, one is 11 years old. They are both from North Korea. They both have like separate family situations. She ends up being an orphan because of stuff going on. His mother, at the very beginning of the story, basically escapes North Korea into China, and it's trying to like, I guess, set her life up over there before he can then escape with her. And so very, very hard-hitting stuff in here. And we then do follow them as they incidentally come together as they're escaping, and they are trying to get out of North Korea and then China and then Laos. And these are countries that could repatriate them back to North Korea. So again, very hard-hitting, very tense situations. I will say the actual writing of this, and I don't know if it's because we're basically just following these 2 kids who are, like I said, 10 and 11. It's very, very simple. Like, I woke up, I did this, I did that. It's not a lot of other sort of stuff going on. We do have the art and the story that way as well. But it's a lot of, I guess, like shorter sentences and more simple things like that. So I do want to say that I felt at the beginning like I wasn't too sure about this one, especially because it is more, it's not historical. It's set in 2013, so it's not historical yet. It is more contemporary, but it is that sort of feeling to me of like I'm reading about a historical event in a fiction setting. Like, this is something that people actually have gone through, you know what I mean? But I didn't really like the way the prose aspect of this was going. However, I cried multiple times because of the actual content of this book. I do think it is an important story. I do think it was presented in a way that is good for a middle grade audience, because we do have people being executed because of stuff, and the looming threat of being sent back to this country that's not necessarily good for them, that has in its own way killed people of their family. I'm gonna give it a 4 because I did have some issues with it, but overall I do think it was good and important. I don't think personally for my own enjoyment I can give it anything higher, because I do think there could have been other ways that would get the point across in something that I would enjoy more. But so far out of everything that I have read, I have enjoyed this the most. I do think this is the most important. I do have 3 more things to get into, obviously, but this was good. It was. And like I said, made me cry multiple times. So now I'm still waiting on one more audiobook that is apparently just taking forever. I have 2 more things left. I'm leaning into, I think, The Flicker next by H.E. Edgman, because from what I've seen, this is going to be more dystopian, whereas this is fantasy, and we just did a couple different fantasy things. Even though they're like different types of fantasy, I want to move that one to later. So this one, I saw one of my mutuals on Instagram read it recently and gave it 5 stars. So like, high hopes for this one. But it says, 1 year ago, a solar flare scorched the earth and destroyed life as we know it. With their parents gone and their supplies running low, grieving step-siblings Millie and Rose leave home with their infant half-brother in search of Millie's grandma, a Seminole elder, who Millie knows in her gut is still alive, even if Rose isn't so sure. Along the way, they meet a group of other surviving kids calling themselves the Lost Boys and their lone adult leader, who reluctantly agrees to help them brave the hostile wasteland to make it to Millie's grandma safely. But the landscape isn't the only threat. There's also the Hive, a villainous group that has spent the last year hoarding supplies and living in luxury, and will do anything to keep it that way. It's going to be a thrilling survival story and a tender exploration of Indigenous ideas of identity and found family. Yeah, I definitely think this could be really, really good. I like the idea that it's not just a fantasy, and I know this author has done YA stuff. I don't know if this is their first middle grade or not. But again, especially with the mutual that I have, who I do feel like we have a pretty similar taste in books, like not 100%, but enough. Giving it a 5-star recently, I'm very excited for this one. Okay guys, so I took a couple days to read this book, but I finished it. And let's just like get into some of the things that went on in here. Not that I'm gonna give like any spoilers necessarily, but this is very much dystopian, and like deals with very hard topics because of that. It is a middle grade, so I do think it does what it does well for that audience. However, I do think it needs to be like upper middle grade because of like the stuff that it really gets into in here. Basically, the flicker happens, and the flicker is this like sun thing where like, I guess like it burned lots of things off in the world, and so a lot of people died previously, and we start off this book with these 2 stepsisters and their younger baby brother having to bury one of their dads because he has recently passed away, and that means they're basically, that's all they have left is them 2 and the baby, and they need to try and survive. And one of them, Millie, who is our Native American character and our Indigenous character, she wants to go find her grandmother because she knows in her heart that her grandmother is still alive. And they meet these other preteen, teenage kids along the way. And then there's like the bad people there. And it has a lot of commentary that I felt was very current, because it talks a little bit about like, yeah, the sun caused this, but we have rich people who were like overtaking resources and the sort of climate change and things like that. And so I feel like it was a very hard read in places. It was very like recent future type of thing. Is that what I'm trying to say? Like, this could be soon. And it was very, very hard to read. I will say that I feel like the second half, actually probably closer to like the last third, picks up the pace a lot, and I really liked where the ending was. I really liked the characters. I liked the discussion about being trans as well, because we do have a trans character in here that is already out and trans like when they meet him, but we also have like discovering yourself and what does it mean, that kind of stuff, which I really did enjoy. I wasn't sure what I was going to rate this when I first started reading it, especially because it is so heavy. Like, again, this is middle grade, but I do think it needs to be upper middle grade. Like, do not give this to your 8-year-old probably. The characters in here I think are around 12 at like the majority of the characters. But by the ending, I cried. It's a 5-star. It was really, really well done. Again, darker than the other books that I was reading for this, but I really, really enjoyed it. So now, the next book that we have here is Vanya and the Wild Hunt by Sangu Mandana. This one definitely looks like it's going to be more, hopefully, like a happier fantasy. This is an author that I have not read before, but I have seen her like adult romance, I think they're romance, like witchy style books that I have very much been interested in, and so the fact that we have a middle grade, I'm very, very curious about this one. But then also the last book I was waiting on came in on my hold for my audiobook, which is Away by Megan E. Freeman. This is technically the second book in a companion sort of series. We'll see how this goes. I don't think I have to read the first one to read this, especially since it was on the list. But it's only like a 4-hour audiobook, and so when I listen on 2x speed, it should only take a couple hours. I don't actually know which one I'm going to read next, which is why I'm letting you know that we have those 2 left, because I probably will need to do laundry later today, and if I'm going to do that, I'll put on the audiobook. But if not, I'll jump right on into my next physical read. So those are the last 2 books we have going on. I'm very excited. It looks like we have some illustrations thrown in here, not like a ton, but some, which means that's gonna be fun. So I'll come back when I read another book. Okay, so I have not finished another book yet. It is the exact same day, but I did want to just like update the fact that I started Away by Megan E. Freeman, because like I said, I have the audiobook of this and I was doing laundry. The thing is, I use my Bookly app to read the books. Like, this is an app that I've talked about before, but it like tracks how long it takes to read. And so I put the books in this app like on my page so that I have what I'm gonna read and it tracks the time. Well, this is the longest of all the middle grade books that I have at like 480 pages. But it's only a 4-hour audiobook. And so right now, I listened to about 23 minutes, I want to say, and I'm at page 91 now, like 19% of the way in, because of how quick it's going. I don't really know much about it yet because it's been like 20 minutes. I am listening on 2x speed, so I guess like technically it would have been like 40 minutes. But basically we're following a bunch of different kids who have, at this point in time, like I'm in the middle of a chapter sort of thing, I mean, in between different point of views, where they're all being evacuated from Colorado with their families because of some unnamed threat. We don't know what it is. Before this happened, there were curfews happening in town as well. So like there's something going on that I don't fully know. We'll have to see as it goes, obviously. But it's voiced by like 5 or 6 different people. So we have a lot of different voices, which very much helps with the fact that like it seems like the chapters are very quick and between different points of view. But because I don't have the book in my hands, I don't know if this is in verse or not, or if it's just because of how many points of view it's very spaced out. I don't know, like 480 pages for a 4-hour audiobook seems crazy to me, because I listened to the other audiobook that I read recently, which was Afia in the Land of Wonders, and that was a 300-page book, but it was like a 5-hour audiobook. So like we're over another 100 pages more, but half an hour less, basically. Or an hour less, half an hour for me, because I 2x speed. Yeah? So I'm just like, wow. That's a big difference. Like when I hear 400 something pages, I don't think really short audiobook. That's all I'm at so far. Like I'm intrigued. I like the narration. I like the fact that we have multiple narrators. I'm going to read more later. But I just finished my laundry. Took me like I said, like 22, 23 minutes. And so that's where I'm at. Just like sort of amazed that this is a long page number book, but not actually going to be a long read. Okay, so I am back now. Again, been a couple days. I feel like I'm slowing down a little bit in this vlog because I'm part TBR reader, which is what I feel like we're doing right now, and part mood reader. And I didn't actually do my TBR game this month because I wanted to be able to mood read a little bit more. And I do think reading these middle grades has really brought me out of that reading slump that I was in, which is part of the reason I was very excited to do this. But I'm now at that point where like, I finished one more book, we will talk about it, but I have one more left. And I'm just like, I want to read something else. So we shall see if I do something else in the middle or not. But I did finish Away by Megan E. Freeman, which is a companion novel to Alone, which I have not read. I will say they do have little hints about the other book, but it does not feel, in my opinion, like anything is a spoiler because I have not read the other one. Like the only hints that you get is like if you've read even the summary of Alone, they mention like just like 2 to 3 times that sort of concept of like what the summary was, which is like one girl who was supposed to have a sleepover with her friends and like stuff falls through. And when I say sleepover, it was a sleepover, but it was like their parents didn't know that they were going to be sleeping somewhere alone. And so she ends up being, I guess, the only one that goes there. And so then wakes up and the events of like this one have taken place where everybody is evacuated from multiple towns in Colorado. And so she wakes up alone. I don't know anything else about it. And we only get a couple hints during Away of there being a girl left behind potentially. Like we don't really know much. So I do want to say there are hints, but I do feel it's a very good companion novel in a way because of the fact that like we don't get spoilers. It's not like some companion novels, like romance novels, where like the couple from book 1 will come back and maybe get engaged or something in book 2, even though it's a different couple's book. So like it's not that. It's like everything takes place at the same time period. I will say also we have lots of different points of view here. I did listen to it on audio, and so I really, really appreciated they had multiple different narrators. Like that was very, very well done. I want to say some of the writing style is a little bit plain, and I think it's because these are all kids that are young, 12 or so maybe, like I don't really know everybody's ages, talking to each other, and so it's very sort of simple language for a lot of it, which is fine. At least one person, I'm pretty sure their point of view is like a script, and I'm pretty sure in the book it would show like the words of whoever's talking and then the stuff, because the way it's narrated definitely feels that way. And again, I wasn't able to see it physically because I was listening to it, but I have a feeling like one of the guys is very into like theater and film and stuff, and I feel like his parts definitely lean into that, like a script. I will also say this takes place, this book, over 2 years, like over 2 years. And so it felt very, very fast in such a way that I didn't fully care about everything until like the last third or a quarter maybe of the book. I don't actually know where because it moved very quickly. Like this whole book only took me 2 hours and 4 minutes to read. So it's very, very quick. I don't know exactly where I started caring about it more, but we follow a bunch of kids that get evacuated from different towns across Colorado, and they end up in the same detention center. It's not like detention, I don't know, sheltering in place type of thing. And because one girl wants to be a journalist and one guy's really into theater and movies and stuff, and one girl is the daughter of the doctor that's there, the other guy is a farmer whose dad is probably left back where it was. They all come together and like talk about why they're there and try and figure out like what's going on. There's some sort of contamination that's happening in Colorado. And so like everything moves very, very, very quickly until you get to like the actual like, this is why this stuff was happening near the end. I liked that part. There were a couple times where like certain ways that they explained things just like got me. But I don't know exactly what to rate this. I was thinking through most of the story. It was probably like a 3, maybe 3.5. But then there was a couple parts that I really enjoyed. I do think the overall concept was good. So I think I'm leaning towards maybe a low 4. Like again, not a brand new favorite, but I do think the execution, besides the fact that it felt very, very fast, was good. I don't think it's nearly as dark as The Flicker, so I do think even a very much younger middle grade audience could really read this and get something out of it for sure. Just not 100% my thing, but I think what it's doing, it did well, especially for a middle grade audience. So there is that. That means the last book we have to read is Vanya and the Wild Hunt by Sengu Mandana. So this one, like I said, I've only ever heard of this author's like romance, cozy, witchy romance books. In the back, I was looking at the author part, and it does say she has several fantasy novels for children, and I didn't know that, but so I'm very excited to read this. I will also say I've been trying to avoid spoilers of like who won everything, but it has been so long now that I know this one won the Barnes & Noble middle grade. Right now, like I said, I have high hopes for this. We'll see. I feel like everything that they picked could have won for a reason. My favorite so far has been The Flicker, but it is very much a darker, more mature take for like a middle grade dystopian sort of thing. And so some of these other ones that we read were a little bit more upbeat. Not all of them, but some. So I'm really hoping for a nice, fun middle grade fantasy with this. And I'm excited to see what I think about it because of the fact that it did win the middle grade award. But yeah, that's my last one that we have to do. So let's do it. Okay, and so we are back finally. It's been another couple days again with Vanya and the Wild Hunt by Sengu Mandana. So like I said before, this one did win for the actual awards thing that we were reading. I don't think it's my favorite. My favorite actually was The Flicker. I gave that one a full 5 stars. I do think I'm gonna go with a 4.5. I was going back and forth a little bit on this because there are some things I think it does very, very well. And then there are other times where it just feels like it's trying to rush through some stuff. And I didn't appreciate that as much. I mean, this is only like 270 something pages. So it was a very, very quick read. It only took me like 2 sessions to read it. And I was up late last night reading this. And I got to a point where it was like midnight. And I was like, do I really want to finish it? And I thought I had like 40 minutes left of this. It was closer to 30. I don't know if maybe it was just like the ending felt like it sped by in a good way. But I probably could have finished it last night in like one sitting, and I didn't. I finished it this morning. But basically we follow our main character of Vanya, and this is like one of those like magical school books. So if you're really looking for that like middle grade magical school, she finds out that there's like magic and stuff. I mean, she can talk to books, some like special books. So she sort of knows that there's a little bit of magic in the world. But then she finds out that there's even more and more people around that know this stuff too. This is a really good book for that. It definitely dives into that magical school nature. The thing is, this is Vanya and the Wild Hunt, and I feel like the Wild Hunt is supposed to be this old god. This is a world where there's different old gods, and they're like not necessarily nice, and they cause problems, and the magical school is like a way of combating it. I don't think the Wild Hunt aspect comes in as much as I would like. There's a few times, but I was actually wanting a little bit more from it. And so at the beginning of the story, we have like a pretty good setup of her discovering the magic in the magical school. And then like the ending was really good, I thought, as well. And there was like 1 or 2 other scenes in the middle, but a lot of it is like her going to this magical school and being like, oh my gosh, the walls were like this and the water was like this and here's this and this and this and this. It was like a lot of descriptions that I just felt like everything was trying to be pushed in too quickly. Like I wanted a little bit more of a slow down experience of it because it's a brand new school. Instead, we got a lot of description of like the different towers that are there and the way that the doors work, and the library is magical and there's a waterfall and things like that. Like I just wanted a little bit like to slow it down a little bit. I wanted a little bit more from friendships. We're introduced to like 3 specific friends that she can have, but like one of them was the beginning of the story, and then we don't really see her again for much of the story. And then there was a boy that she's introduced about in the middle of the story, and then he's there a little bit more near the end. I was just wishing for a little bit more development for some of those parts, because then other parts that we had were really, really good. I also liked the fact that we had a lot of different disability representation in here. Vanya has ADHD, and they really get into what does that sort of mean for her? And they don't use the word masking necessarily, but they do talk about how she tries to hide parts of herself to make herself seem better for other not normal people, but like other people that aren't neurodivergent. We have a side character who says that he has autism. They talk about that a little bit. We also have a character who has to use a cane to walk. Like, we have a lot of different diversity in here. Not only obviously is Vanya Indian as well, we have like other characters, one who speaks Cantonese and things like that. Like, I like that we had that in here. And then we also do have LGBTQ representation as well. The people that take Vanya into the school are some old friends of both of her parents, and they're actually a married gay couple. I just really like that we have that diversity in here. So even though this is a middle grade, we're not necessarily focusing on Vanya's sexuality or romantic history because she's 11. Like, she doesn't have any of that right now, really, but the people around her are unique and have that kind of stuff. So this is one of those things where, like, I feel like it's mostly because it's a first book in a middle grade fantasy. And I've had this happen before with other fantasy series that are middle grade, where like the first book is a good introduction, but it's not like wowing me in a way. And then once they start continuing the series, we get more in depth for things. And I hope that's where we're gonna go with this, because I did enjoy it. I just felt like at parts it was very, very quick, and they were just trying to speed through stuff that I did not enjoy as much. So the parts that I enjoyed, I really, really enjoyed. I like the idea of the world. Again, I wish I had a little bit more world building in there, but I can see why this won. I feel like it has a good overall of everything. So even though personally, I gave The Flicker a 5-star, that one definitely feels like for a much older audience, very dark in comparison. This is definitely more like a fun fantasy, especially the first book building up this middle grade fantasy series. Like, I really, really do want more. And so I can definitely see why this was the one that Barnes & Noble picked to be their middle grade, because it was good. There were some things that like I wish was better, but overall, very, very good. And it makes me excited to read her adult, like, witchy romance type of things, because I do feel like the way that the writing style was easy to get into, but not just super basic. So I think that's a plus as well. So that's it for that one. That is all of the books. Like I said before, I think The Flicker is my top. Vanya is pretty high up there. And then you guys saw my ratings for everything else. I think the only thing is the things that I rated closer to like 3, 3.5, that kind of stuff, they were just things that even for a middle grade, even knowing that I'm an adult reading middle grade, I just feel like it needed a little bit more depth to it. So again, nothing necessarily bad, just I would prefer in my middle grade to have a little bit more of that. And so that is going to be it for the middle grades. Now, I did do a picture book vlog like this previously, and I did it before they announced the winners. So the winner for the picture books was The Bakery Dragon by Devin L. Kurtz, which again was not like my top pick, but still really, really good. We kept all the picture books because of course we will read them over and over again with my kids, but I really love the art style of that, so it definitely again makes sense. I thought the messaging of that one was cute, so yeah. I understand that. Now, they did do a young adult category as well. This one does seem to be a little bit harder to get a hold of some of the books. Like, I think the YA category is a little bit more sought after with audiobooks and other things like that. And I'm not entirely too sure I want to read that right now. So I think as of this point, I'm not going to be focusing on the YA books. However, that does not mean I'm not going to try and read some of them in the future, because they are intriguing, you know what I mean? But I don't see a good way of getting a hold of them unless I like bought them all, and I don't know if I want to do that because like my TBR that I have back here, the YA books do not get picked up as much as the adult books. Or middle grade even. I have been really enjoying the middle grades that I've read this year. So that was part of the reason I want to do this video. So I think that is going to be it for me today. If you guys like this video, give it a thumbs up to let me know. Subscribe to this channel if you'd like to see more videos. I do have videos coming out Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, so I will see you then. Bye!